Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here for the Magic is Real podcast. I am your host, Shannon. This is the podcast where we talk about all things metaphysical and spiritual with a focus on near death experiences and other spiritually transformative experiences, and branching out into other conversations about how we can use these abilities for good to help in our lives. So, very happy that you're here. And if you like this podcast, would you just do me a favor and like, subscribe, share, all those things? It makes such a big difference. It provokes the algorithm to share this podcast with more listeners so that people know that we're here and doing what we're doing, and to find people that are like-minded and can benefit from what we have to share. Thank you so much. Today I have with me Tahverlee Anglen. Tavhverlee is the founder of Moon Temple Mystery School, guiding seekers through the mystical landscapes of witchcraft, empowerment, and transformation. She's also an accomplished speaker, social impact entrepreneur, and author of the upcoming book that redefines what it means to walk the witch path in today's world. That is an upcoming book, which we'll talk about. Her practical yet deeply mystical approach resonates with those seeking personal power and sovereignty in a world that often misunderstands the true essence of the witch. Tahverlee is dedicated to preserving, protecting, and teaching ancient mysteries to those called to learn. As a guardian, protector, lightworker, healer, psychic, record keeper, magician, warrior, watcher, and witch, she creates a space for sacred connection. Her purpose is to help raise the vibration of our internal and external energy and guide others in mastering its expanse. Tahverlee, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me and thank you for taking time to introduce me.
I'm I'm so honored to have you, and I'm now realizing that I need to have my eyes checked because I'm having trouble reading these days. So, the pardon the slow reading of that bio, but so happy to have you here, and I'd just love to learn about you. I want to know all
Hmm.
about you as a human being. Anything you're comfortable sharing about your background, your childhood. Were you raised spiritual, non-spiritual? Anything you'd like to share as it pertains to your personal spiritual journey.
Yeah, our initial starting programming, as I like to think of it, that we all have as a child, for many of us, does include something extraordinary, right? Something from the unseen worlds, whether we find it in free play or imagination as a child, or in some cases, some type of path of religion. And for me, I come from a really small town in the mountains of Colorado, and my parents were definitely not religious, and they didn't have pagan practices either. I mean, I would say that I was like a blank slate. My parents were hippies when I was raised, and I did have this foundational um, programming of love and openness and freedom for sure. But my calling, like to go deeper into spiritual practices, has been my own since I was young. I even used to, walk across town by myself and in my fanciest jeans when I was under the age of 10 to walk into the back of a church and sit in a pew with all the adults, meaning all the kids would go to Sunday school, and I would just sneak in the back and sit in the pew. And the whole time I would just cry because I could feel something that I didn't know. I didn't really understand what was being said. And, I ignored everybody's invitation to go down into Sunday school. But I feel like that call is something that I have felt since I was, a small child. And I found it in places. I found it when I would sit next to the river that ran through my town. I would find it when I was, walking in the mountains with the trees by myself, singing songs to myself. And, then I found it in ways in which I played competitive sports or ways in which I challenged myself to grow. And, as I think all of us do, we have these stages in our life where we conform into the box, right, of what we think we're supposed to do to be happy. And so I think that desire to experience something more that we have as children often gets buried under this, checklist of what we need to do to be successful and to be happy. And lots of us do it, myself included. And it wasn't until the things that I thought were going to bring me the greatest happiness in my life didn't, that I started being stripped bare, like time and time again, of these beliefs on where happiness is. And I really feel like what I was seeking during a lot of years in my adulthood was what I used to feel as a child when I felt free. And how I got there is, for me is definitely guiding down a spiritual path where the right teacher comes at the right time, and the right initiation happened at the right time, or the right challenge happened at the right time that taught me a lot. And I know you talk a lot on this show around near death experiences. And I'll tell you, I had one pretty profound experience when I was, it was probably almost 15 years ago, where I had a complication following a removal of a tumor in my breast. And I developed a severe staph infection, and I ended up in the ICU for 6 days, and I had to have an emergency surgery. And that particular surgery, which I've had 12 major surgeries, that's just a small amount of them. That particular surgery, because I was so sick, as I was preparing to, have the emergency surgery, I thought that it was possibly the end. I was in my mid 30s at the time, and, I'm looking at my children across the room and thinking, well, what parting words do I want to give them before I go? And I realized in that moment that I didn't feel uncomfortable with the idea that it was the end for me. It's almost like in my mind, I played through all the things I had survived, all the things I had gone through. And, I was born with my legs wrapped around each other like pretzels, and I've had half of my organs removed. So, I mean, I've faced a lot of physical challenges in my life. And that is what kind of stuck out to me at that phase where I might go. So I wouldn't say I had a near death experience, but I will tell you that when I was put to sleep for that second emergency surgery, I came to the edge of the cliff and saw the other side. And I didn't go to the other side, I just witnessed it. And I distinctly remember waking up and thinking, oh, that's what that was. And that was the other side. And I'm still here. And I woke up and I'm still here. And so that stripped away probably the last layer of conditioning that kept me, uh, chasing what I thought would fit inside the box to make me happy. And from there, my internal seeker, the desire to feel the things I used to feel when my feet would dangle in a river when I was young, when I sat in the field by myself, that desire has not left my field since then. And so, where I find that feeling and how I explore that path, well, as a practicing witch, now I do it in a lot of different ways than maybe I would have done 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. And who knows, 2 years from now, it might be a totally different practice. And, but yeah, that gives you kind of an overview for me.
Yeah, that's great. What was it that did you have any ideas of any other career paths or life paths before you delved into the world of witchery?
You mean on the spiritual
On
side? Well,
Yeah, or whatever. Like, did you think, oh, I'm going to be a minister, or did you think I'm going to be a doctor, or whatever it
mm,
was? Yeah.
yeah, in college I studied psychology, and it's funny, even when I was in high school, I volunteered at a youth facility, which is really interesting to think being that young, volunteering at a facility with youth. So I definitely have been service driven. And as a social impact entrepreneur, I still am. My career has been in nonprofit management and international development, and I still work with a variety of nonprofits now, which I love. And it is that desire to be of service is really a big part of my path as a witch, but it's also a big part of what I've done professionally. And to me, I don't necessarily separate it because I'm fortunate enough to have hung my shingle on both sides. I do nonprofit work as a consultant, and I do, my witch work as a passion and as, acts of service as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just wondered if you were like on one path and then suddenly you just went a whole different, but I think it is. Yeah, you always knew who you were. And
Hmm.
I'm the same. If I'm not doing work that's of service and making some kind of a difference, I feel very uncomfortable and not in a judgmental way, just in my soul. It doesn't feel right or in alignment. So let's talk about what being a witch means, because as your bio touches upon, and as we all know, witches get a bad rap. So there's this idea that witches are, a lot of people think that it means that I said, but people that work in the arts as a psychic medium, I have the same reaction a lot of the time with people who are religious that think we're dealing with the devil, we are working with the black arts. and that kind of thing. And then, of course, historically, witches were burned at the stake and persecuted out of fear. And perhaps some people use it for I'm sure there are people that do use witchcraft for with bad intention. But tell me about what being a witch means.
Well, you just spoke a lot of big words there that we could go into any of those, and I'll start with the
Yeah,
idea that um, there's good and bad in everything because we're human, right?
yeah.
So there is good and bad in every practice and every religion and every group or every culture. It just exists. It's a part of us being human is that we are fallible. We make errors, we make mistakes, we hunger for revenge and control. And there's no different, that's not different in the witchcraft communities. Good and bad exists in all things. The issue in a lot of practices that I teach and that I experience in witchcraft communities is how do you define good versus bad? And I often ask people when I'm asked that question, because one of the most commonly asked questions I get is if I'm a good witch or a bad witch. And, I understand what people are asking, what they really want to know is, do you hex people? Like, do you create harm? But what they say is, are you a good witch or a bad witch? And to me, my answer is, well, it depends on how you define good versus bad. And usually that takes us down a conversation of, another question could be is how far would you go to protect those that you love? Because people that come to me for witchery or for support or work in any way, shape, or form, especially specifically around spell work, if they're coming to me to protect themselves and their family and those that they love, that question will be answered very differently. As opposed to, are you doing a spell to manifest, or are you using spell work or rituals to honor your own death and rebirth or life transitions, or are you using a spell to, bring love in? That's all very different than when it comes to life and death and protection. And that's where it seems to get kind of gray area, right?
Hmm.
And and the reason why that's important to think about is that what you might feel that you need protection from is very different than cosmically what we feel we need protection from, which is very different than what maybe, let's say, our community feels like it needs protection from. And so it's a very multifaceted topic when we think of the definition of witches. Now, to me, a witch is just someone that is aware of and knows how to manipulate energy. And it doesn't mean manipulate for something that you might perceive as bad, but it's just working with energy. All spells and rituals work with energy, both inside yourself and around you. And, spoken word spells are a type of prayer. There's many different ways to approach what it means to be a practicing witch. But if we were to focus on witches just being those that are either connected to all things, understand how all things are connected. Witches can also be those that utilize their psychic gifts to create harmony in their life. Or it could also be, that big category of the manipulation of energy. And then of course there's like 10 layers in between. But those are
Right.
kind of the buckets that I think most people traditionally know a witch to be as now. And in my experience, those that really own and wear, the cloak of witchery desire to be in one of those fields. And it's usually more of a calling and a desire than it is, something that is thrust upon us, right? Now, at least we're in 2025.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that's why I jokingly call myself a witch, but I think
Yeah.
I don't really have to make it a joke because that is how I live my life, which is using my intuition for good, to be of service to people, to help people in grief, to help support people on their path, to give them faith, even just doing this show, to give them faith that magic is real, that what we see is sort of an illusion and it's very real, very important. Our connections and people we love, very important experiences. However, also, we do have the ability to manipulate the energy. And I'd love to hear you talk about that. And I'll ask a more specific question about that afterwards. But when we talk about manifestation, for example, what
Hmm.
kind of power do we have to actually manipulate has a negative connotation, I
It
think,
does.
but
Hmm.
to work with to you can find a better term if you prefer, but
I
how
like
much
to
power
push
do we?
the edges, which is why I use
Yeah.
that word, right? I mean, manifesting is just understanding the frequency of where you are versus the frequency of where you need to be for the thing that you want.
Hmm.
And it all originates inside of us, inside of our bodies, just like our psychic gifts. People think it's something outside of you that you need to have in order to do the thing, but really it's all coming from inside of you. Like you're the source code. And manifesting isn't, it doesn't take a long time. It doesn't, take big spells or rituals to do. It's understanding yourself so deeply that you know how to adjust your own frequency. And that is where most manifestations don't work, is because we carry beliefs around about ourselves so deeply. No spells can overcome beliefs that you have about yourself. So if you're trying to manifest like a promotion at work or an increase in salary or more clients, and yet you have this upper limit kind of threshold that you've put on yourself or your society or your family or conditioning has put upon you, that you're not sure if you'll still be relatable if you get above that, or if you earn more than anybody in your family has earned, are you going to be too good to fit in? Or if you become so different than everyone else in your community, will you still want that amount of thing that you manifest? We don't even realize that that's going on 90% of the time. And those subconscious beliefs, which, I know that you are aware of what it is that I'm speaking of, that's all the work of manifestation, because that all boils down to frequency. And most of the time, big spells and rituals that are around manifesting or calling something new in, let's say that instead of manifesting.
Yeah.
If you're calling something new in that you don't have, you start with the process of asking yourself, why don't I have that yet? Like, what has stopped me? What are the barriers? And then you do spells for that. Like, that's the first step. Then you move through those layers and you say, okay, okay, okay. Now I see in my life where I have blocks, or where I haven't believed in myself, or, what old belief has come into play, or what barriers or lack of boundaries have I had to get there. Okay, I've addressed those now. Now, how do I inch past it? Right? How do I open a new door? So then we bring in spell work for door opening spells, or to step out of the hallway of the in-between time of who you once were to who you're going to be. And we bring spells in to cross that threshold and open a new door. But then it doesn't stop there. Because then once we're in a situation, a place, or have a thing that we've never had before, well, our body's going to be like, oh, this isn't safe. I don't know what this is. This is unfamiliar. Do I really want this? Is this good? And so then we can bring spells and rituals in to settle our body into a new level. And then from there, we start to dream again, and the whole cycle starts. And all of that is unwinding beliefs and adjusting your frequency and being able to understand how that feels in your body. Because, as we continue to grow and as we continue to bring the things in that we desire in life, it requires us to continually up level. Like that bar just gets raised, and not because we want more. And this isn't just about, say, money or jobs or things. This is about our own capacity to receive joy and be happy and live in peace and abundance, even when it feels like the world is burning down around us. That's big work. And that, to me, is what I mean by manipulating energy. You're really manipulating your own energy. You're adjusting, you're moving, you're changing, you're shedding, you're growing, and you're um, taking that dial and turning it up and down so you can navigate through your own changes to get to the next destination.
Yes, that resonates entirely. And I thank you. Let's talk about spells. I always wonder about this.
Yes, let's do. I love
Be-
talking about spells.
yes. So, are spells simply for me? I always like I did a spell. It was like a money spell, abundance spell, and it said on the little box like sit with the candle until it burns all the way down as you focus in your intention. Well, I got tired and I'm like, I got to go to bed. So I just said, I now intend that we close this for today. We come back to it and everything. It's the momentum is still moving because in my mind, and my roommate went, oh no, did you stop it halfway through? I said, what I understand from being a psychic medium is it's really about intention. So if I don't follow the instructions, which I'm like, who came up with the instructions? Or is it just sort of a ritual to sort of make material what we're intending? It's like a visual for us to sort of have an anchor, so that it's not really about the magic of the candle. You already contain the ruby slippers. It's already in you. This is sort of just a ritual. So I would like you to explain your understanding of kind of what a spell is, how we decide what the ritual is.
Mm,
Like if you're like,
mhm.
okay, you take pig's blood and an eyeball, an eye of newt, and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And I know that certain herbs have different properties and that kind of thing, and oils. And so and you can go on about that, I'm sure. So please just take it away.
I'll keep it simple, but I would love to do this.
You can go on about it if you want, is what I'm saying. I'm giving, like, please tell me everything you know.
So, first of all, this is great because a lot of people question, right? How a spell can work for them that somebody else created.
Mhm.
And you did the right thing, first of all. You followed your intuition. And I think of a spell like a recipe. In
Yeah.
some cases, you should follow it to a T. If I'm making bread and I leave out the yeast, my bread is not going to rise. Some spells will work like that.
Yeah.
Some spells, not so much, meaning you can substitute items, you can bring in different things, you can mix it a little bit differently. The most important thing is to actually do the thing. But here's where to start. So let's say, for example, someone wants to do a money spell, and I'm going to write this down so we can kind of talk a little bit about, the spell that you did. Um, the first thing you should do, of course, as I said before, is explore your beliefs around it. To me, knowing what you want and why you want it is the biggest part of the work of a spell. The actual conducting of the spell, the lighting of the candle and the casting of the tools of the things is this big compared to the spell, which is this big. And I often say, emergency magic is bad magic. And it's not because we don't need emergency magic sometimes. It's because people use that in place of doing the actual work to plan and create a full spell because the pre-work to a spell is more important than the actual conducting. In fact, for me, when I do spell work for others, usually it's, a creation process. It's in motion well before we do the working. And probably 85 to 90% of the time, the spell is already coming to fruition before we've lit the proverbial candle in the working. So that beginning part is important. So I would say for you, if you wanted to try this again, focus on what you want exactly. Now, money is different because most people want money, but if it wasn't money, you know, sometimes it's harder. Like the hardest part for people is to know exactly what they want and why. If you, and I'm not talking about you, but if somebody wants to, let's say they want to manifest a $10,000 raise because things are tight at home, like, whatever, you don't have a lot of extra spending money after you buy groceries and take care of your family and pay your bills, and $10,000 a year in income would give you some buffer, right? That's knowing what you want and that's knowing why you want it. Well, that feeling you get in your body at the thought of if you just got a $10,000 client. That feeling where all of a sudden your body just goes, "Ah," like I can take a breath today. That's really what you want, not the $10,000. That feeling is what you want. And so if we're using the avenue of $10,000 to do it, we know why we want it, we know what the feeling of it feels like. Then we start to plan an intention. So step one would be know what you want and why. And of course, I'm going to suggest, people should write it out. They should journal. You should write and journal and practice, write it out. All the things that I'm just speaking could be 2 pages of your journal to get to that final conclusion of saying, oh, that feeling of freedom and safety. That's really what I want. And I'm using one step of that, of, a boost in income so I can take a breath. So I have a little bit more breathing room in the pressure that I carry day to day. That's the why. So then you come back and you create a formal intention. So if number one is to contemplate what you want, then number two is to write it out then with clarity, being super clear. And that end little piece of why needs to be in your intention. So it could just be something like, so I can take a deeper breath and have more spaciousness in my finances. I am calling forth a $10,000 raise in my current job. Or it could just be, I'm calling forth $10,000 in whatever way it wants to come. Right? So you see how I've taken all of that down and distilled it into two sentences. And it can be, I'm now a lot of witches might teach you to not say I'm calling in because that means you don't yet have it. When it comes to a spell, we are acknowledging that we don't yet have it. The moment we cast the spell, we then have it. So we don't repeat the spell, right? Because we've cast it. We've put it out and now we are going to have it. So number two would be to write the intention. And then number three, decide what tools you're going to use. And you're right, there's lots of plants and candles and crystals and divination tools to use. And there's lots of things that you can use. And my suggestion is to just research because every component that you bring into a spell will have meaning, and you can also give components meanings. So for example, I have this really old silver dollar sitting on my desk because it's a part of silver dollars that I inherited, and I have no idea how it ended up on my desk. It's here. I was looking for another tool to show you. I can supercharge this coin to be whatever I want it to be. I can clear it and I can supercharge it. This could represent uh, um, a whole bunch of different things, but this also could represent the entire money spell. I could take this and put it underneath any, and this is a Canadian coin too. I could put it underneath any color of candle that I've inscribed with that intention. I could put any flowers around it that represent to me what beauty and that safety feels like. I can add it to whatever crystals I want. I can burn the candle for an hour a day for a month, or I can burn the candle in one entire shot. That I could dust this off and carry it in my pocket as a representation of it being done. So tools matter, yes, you matter more. So when you say that you burned it to the half because you're ready to go to bed, I mean, that's right. You can still burn the candle. You can keep it next to your desk and burn it till it's done. If you consider it done when you extinguish it, it's done,
Mm.
right? You're the magic, not the tool. The tools are extensions, and they do add uh, amplification, right? Like something like this would amplify a money spell, but this would also amplify a healing spell. This could amplify anything that I wanted to bring metal into. And so for most people, you just research, right? If you want to bring a plant ally in and you want to decorate and dress a candle and add cinnamon to it and your favorite uh, essential oils, you could add it to your candle and add it to your body because you're the temple. You're the primary
Yeah.
temple. So there's a whole bunch of different ways you can bring the tools together. But then you plan when you're going to actually make it official. So all the work that you've done, right? It's the casting of the spell. And like I said, it probably takes this long compared to everything that I just described. Everything that
Hmm.
I just described is the foundation. It's the preparation. It's the planning. Like good spells are the result of good planning. And sometimes that just means you play with it in your mind, right? Maybe when you're driving to work every day, you contemplate something that you truly desire and you just start thinking about it and you contemplate it. Like, why do you want it? How's it going to make your life better? Who is it going to protect or who is it going to benefit? And why? And then you might, in your mind, just start thinking about it, jot some notes down in your phone when you're on a break about how you could put this together and what your intention is. And then will come a day when you're ready to just have it be done, to put it out there, like you did last night. And the best way that I suggest people to do it is to write it down, add whatever tools you're going to do to it. If you're going to use a candle, light the candle or hold an inner flame inside of you. Speak your intention out loud and then conclude it by saying, and so it is done. Or, and so it is. Or, ah, when. Or, because I speak it, so it shall be. And then close it and consider it done. And you can leave your items on an altar. You could carry a little piece around if you used something like this in your pocket just to remember. And then your job after that is to take the step that you need to take every day as a human towards that thing that you wanted. Spells are not a one time I do all the work, I explore my beliefs, I tell the universe or God or the goddess what I want, and then I sit back and I eat Cheetos and watch Netflix every night. there is a component of that that you follow up on. If it's a money spell, for example, that means then after the spell is cast, what promotions are you applying for? What jobs are you applying for? And if none of that's in your peripheral, you're just looking, you're just seeking. What opportunity is there out there? What door is presenting itself for this $10,000 to come to me? Where can I take a next step? And if you don't know, you just keep seeking. Sometimes you don't need to take an actual step for it to come into your reality. It doesn't always just work like that. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it comes in the form of a new client. Sometimes it comes in the form of a new collaboration. Sometimes it comes in the form of where and I see this for so many people with something free that has that exact same value that you would normally pay for. So something happens and all of a sudden, the your local county is not charging for a particular utilities bill and it equals, 1/4 of what you asked for. And all of a sudden you qualified for some additional grant or loan somewhere and that piles in. And then you get this small incremental little gift from someone. And then you walk down the road and you start finding $20, $100 bills. And then all of a sudden, 60 days later, that same amount is there, not in one big chunk, but in all these different gifts. And that's why when I say you start seeking doors and opportunities to open, you start paying attention to how how many blessings come your way that have to do with money. And that was a long explanation with one
That's
example of a spell.
perfect.
Yeah.
No, that's really, really resonant also. These are all the things I've been thinking of, talking about on the podcast, hearing, feeling, and so I appreciate that so much. Now, there are people that will use magic for ill, as we said,
Hmm.
that I always say in everyone's highest and best good, let this money come to me with harm to none, in everyone's highest and best good. And yet there are people who might feel vindictive and say, this person did this to me. And it may not even be something severe, like it wasn't intended. It might just be, oh, this person cheated on me or dumped me or whatever, and I want them to suffer. Now, can they do a black magic on someone and actually have that desired effect? Um, and if so, and if so, why? And if so, also, what can we do to protect ourselves against that kind of, if that's a thing, magic that might be used against us?
So I'll separate those two. So the first question is, can baneful magic work? And then number two, how do we protect ourselves? And I want to also go back to the spell casting. That was a really rough overview. I do have a class on my website for it's spell casting for beginners. I think it's
Oh,
spell
awesome.
casting 101. It's somewhere, I know you'll drop the
Yeah,
moontempleschool.com link. People can find it. And I give you more like distinct exact steps to take in different situations. And there's lots of really good books out there. I'll recommend Jason Miller's spellcasting books are very good, so I highly recommend
great.
that. So baneful magic, does it work and can someone use it against you? Absolutely. Absolutely. And does it work? Yes. Yes, 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 it does. Um, so tell me what you want to know about that before I talk about
Yeah.
protection, because here's the thing. I think it's also important for people to know when it comes to cursing, hexing, or any type of baneful magic, there's a part of us that might be doing that regularly anyway. So if you're driving down the road and a driver cuts you off and you almost run off the road and you've got your kid in the back and you swear at that driver, you are sending an inadvertent curse to that driver, right? So like we have to remember there is almost always harm to some. So you'll notice in the spell that I gave you, I didn't suggest that you include with no harm to none for the good of all.
Mhm.
Because really, for the good of all is probably not for you to have
Mm,
$10,000 more. It's probably the people that don't have access to running water in Africa that should
yeah.
have access to that. So I'm saying that for us to be real here, like
Mhm.
when especially with a money spell. Um, I don't typically add that in. With harm to none, that is a Wiccan practice. Most of us don't believe, like most witches that I know, if you're not in that tradition or some other traditions as well, don't always practice that. And that's not because we don't believe in it. It's because we believe that the paths that we create, don't include harm to others unless you're intending it,
Okay. Yeah. It goes without
that
saying.
universally, yeah, that
Yeah.
universally, you depending on how you practice, you're guided that way. Like your own blessings in life are guided that way in most instances. So then that's why I didn't include that. So, but baneful magic, yes, it works. And yes, I use baneful magic in certain situations. Yes, I teach baneful magic. And it goes back to that first question of, how do you define good versus bad? And let me give you a real example so it feels like you have some context for this. Because I know for some people it's hard when I say, yes, I practice baneful magic. So I tend to call in a lot of people that have experienced hard times in their life or are still experiencing hard times in their life. I'm really comfortable going into dark places with people or their trauma or into the underworld. I identify as a shadow walker and I'm really comfortable being a light in those dark places for others, which means I often come across people who have experienced significant abuse, trauma, sexual abuse, and sometimes when they come to me, they are still in those situations and looking for a way out.
Yeah.
And, I work with clients from all backgrounds, all ethnicities, um, all professional statuses, all of the above, and it exists everywhere. So when I use any sort of baneful magic, it is usually in the case of creating protection for someone who is disenfranchised. So I'll be super clear. That's my value. Everyone's values will be different around that. And it works 100%. Now, is there a lot of practitioners out there that use it for their own good and for their own um, gain? Yes, as in all things, with great power comes great responsibility. I've seen a recent trend go around on social media, and it's kind of interesting to me. I'm not sure how many people actually know how to do it, but I see it a lot, and so people ask me about it a lot, which is a spell that says anybody that talks bad about me or speaks my name in vain, that I receive their blessings in return. Like the spell
Mm.
is that anybody that does or says anything bad about me, that I'll get a blessing or I'll get a dollar amount or I'll get something in return for every time someone says something negative about me. And the way that that spell is created, it is kind of in the baneful. I would consider it the left-hand path of magic because you're manipulating somebody else's energy for your benefit, even if their intentions aren't good, right? I mean, again, that line of good versus bad becomes very gray when you start thinking of things like this. Um, so I found that kind of an interesting trend that went around for a while. I'm sure a lot of people used it. I think the most important thing to know as someone who might ever wonder if somebody does baneful magic against you is that unless you have leaks or holes in your field, or unless you're playing in like dark fields and you know how to keep a clear energetic channel and have truth with yourself and live by your values, it's hard for those spells to penetrate. And even if they did penetrate, it would be hard for them to be maintained. To keep a hex or a curse alive and functioning all the time takes a significant amount of energy from the practitioner, right? So, and I'll add a caveat here that baneful magic done by a very experienced practitioner is serious. Yes. And most of the time, that practitioner is paid or hired to do the thing on somebody's behalf. Just like with all things, they trade,
Mhm.
they make an energetic exchange, but that's usually a one-time thing. And I think for you, especially, and I'm just tapping into a lot of your listeners, listen, unless you're creating circumstances in which um, someone would want to invest that type of energy against you, it's not really something to be concerned about, in
Mhm.
all honesty. Taking care of your energy and meditating and grounding and speaking your truth and making amends when you mess things up in life and being the best version of you that you can and forgiving yourself and healing your trauma. That's the protection you need. In fact, I would go so far to say that you probably need more protection from yourself and own negative beliefs and your own negative thoughts and your own self doubts than you do from baneful magic. I've talked all this about baneful magic, but it's actually rare for people to know how to use it and to be able to hold the energy to use it. I'll say in general communities, you more likely need protection from yourself and your own negative thoughts than you do from other people.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So what questions come up from that? Because that was a lot about
Yep.
baneful magic.
That's really good because I
Yeah.
think if someone, for example, if I knew someone was hurting a child or an animal, I mean, or anyone really, but that's
Would
just the
you?
most extreme case, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of like you hurt an animal or a child, you, I, I would want them not out of just pure hate, but because that person doesn't is dangerous to society and
Right.
dangerous to the world and dangerous a danger to themselves, hurting
Right.
themselves, hurting other people. So I can imagine taking action in that way of like, hey, I'm not going to go commit a crime, and I would never be able to live with myself if I did. But perhaps I could just say, hey, maybe something takes this this guy out in so that they're out of they're out so that everyone's out of harm's way. It's more of a
Right.
defensive.
Exactly.
I would never wish
Exactly.
that something just because my feelings were hurt. I would never want to hurt somebody. But if it was something that was like a threat to the world or someone that's planning to set off a nuclear bomb, then yes,
Yeah.
goodbye. And so, and
Yeah.
yeah, and on that note, I would love to. I know you can't name client names or anything, but you could even use yourself as. Can you give some examples or an example of a time where what witchery, it was such clear evidence that this works, that the spells worked, and it doesn't even have to be against someone, just even if it was like someone had $0 in their account and they did all of the work you're talking about, not just the spell, but really followed the protocol of let's heal what's inside, let's hear the blocks, and then something miraculous happened. And I'm sure you've seen it a lot, but do you have any
It's almost
specific?
so hard. I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
let me think of
and it
what
could even be general, but like,
what's an interesting one. Here's an interesting one. So a client that I work with regularly, she was looking to get a promotion at work, and at the same time, she was trying to get pregnant, and she was mentoring with me to become, a teacher of the mysteries. And she's just an amazing woman through and through. And she shows up at work like she's a hard worker. She's good at her job. Like she is a professional. And she came to me with the idea that she had, reached out to the person responsible for the hiring, but she felt that there was some blocks, one of the other people somewhere along the path, she knew just didn't have the best vibes about her. And so when she came to me, we talked through like, why does she want this? What are you willing to sacrifice for it? So if you really get this promotion, it might mean you might have less time to focus on getting pregnant. You might have less time to focus on these other things that you have. Like, let's clear the blocks because if we don't talk about that, her internal system might be stopping her from getting that promotion because in her mind, she knows, oh, well, I'm going to be working later. I'm going to be on call 3 weekends a month. Like, how am I going to do that if I'm trying to do this? Right. That's actually what's happening in her field. So we cleared all of that. We just did I think we did like a 14-day spell, which is just visiting your altar, revisiting your candle, like reinforcing the spell for 14 days while she was in the process of the discussions and the interviews. And it was crazy. Before the 14 days was up, not she didn't get the job. She got offered one higher, position higher. So she skipped a level. And it's specifically because of the words that we used around it, because we focused on the why, right? If we focus on the why and the feeling and we clear the blocks, which are the things that she knew she was going to have to sacrifice for this promotion, we cleared that out, which is okay because we also reminded her she could change her mind anytime she wants. Right. So if the other priorities came up and she didn't want to do this anymore, we can change our mind. This was just what she wanted and she knew how. So we focused on the why she wanted this promotion. Like, how was it going to impact her career? How was she going to grow? How was she going to be of service? And the interviews were fast. I think they were all done within the first 10 days of that spell. And I think on day 11, she found out she didn't get the job she applied for. On day 12, she got called into a senior manager's meeting and got offered a position higher, was a director level position. And it was unheard of in her company, first of all, for a woman to be given, like to skip a level because it was a traditional corporate structure of how you progress and to be in a director level as a woman. And it was amazing. And I know that the reason why that happened is because of what she cleared out of her own energy field before we even did the spell. And so that took us, that was a series of three, let's say 3 calls, 3 sessions for us to put it all in motion. And then the fourth session was after the 14 days had taken place. And it was incredible. And that's just, I mean, there's so many examples, but that was a beautiful one. I still love it for her. And she's still in
Yeah.
the job.
And how do you use it in your own life apart from the work that you're doing for other people? What are the ways in which, pardon the pun,
In which,
in
yes.
which you are able to use your own witchery to yeah, to support your own self and those around you, your
Oh,
immediate
yes.
family?
Yes. Well, spells aren't always my primary practice. It's a part of it. Spell work is maybe 10% of my practice as a witch. The other 90% consist of how deeply I'm committed to devotion to keeping my psychic gifts open, how deeply I'm devoted to my space, to creating, tranquil, magical space to live in, uh, my devotion to connecting my body to the elements, all of them, earth, air, fire, and water and spirit continually, morning, noon, and night, and supporting my family in their goals, and whatever is happening only can happen if I am in devotion to myself first. So my practices consist of things like I live a notification free life. So I do not have any dings, texts, or dongs or phone rings ever. My phone lives on silent mode 24/7. My mornings consist of rituals that I do as a high priestess that include, body movements and spoken prayers and words to, set up how I want to experience that day. My meal times consist of gratitude, me thanking whether it was an animal or something that grew that died in order for me to be able to consume it for sustenance. I exercise my body every day in gratitude for being alive, to keep my blood flowing, to honor my inner warrior that needs a place to come out and express itself. At least once a day, I turn music on super, super loud and move my body in a way to remind me that I'm free. I'm free to choose. And that's probably only half my day. So, right, those are more ritually based. I say my life is a ceremony. My day is a ritual, a repeated ritual over and over again. And I don't go through a day without meditating ever. I don't go through a day without putting my feet somewhere in nature. I don't go a day without recognizing all the things that I have to be super grateful for. And I definitely do not go a day without doing a ritual to honor how powerful of a creator I am. And in those moments, then I might think of what I'm creating next. And sometimes I don't even need a spell at this stage in my life for what I desire to create to come to fruition because I hold that frequency. So all of the rituals and work that I do daily is to hold that frequency. And then, of course, for me to show up to do big work for others as a witch and as a reader and as a psychic requires me to do all of those things. Or I wouldn't, as you know, be able to give everything I have when I have session work ahead of me or when I'm teaching a class. Or this Sunday, we're initiating a group of high priestesses, across the veil into a new life. And initiation as the temple keeper is a very large commitment on my part. And it will take me a full 24 hours of alignment work to conserve, create, ground, and align my energy to be prepared for that.
Mm, yeah, that's nice. That's nice to be able to get back to the basics because it can be so difficult in today's society where there is so much of that. I always keep my phone on silent, and yet I'm still constantly feeling bombarded and also engaging in the bombardment. So it is
Mhm.
so important, I think, to get back to the roots, which is
And
nature.
listen, there's so much external noise coming at us all the time, all
Yeah.
day, every day, that I know we've spent a good chunk of our time together talking about spells, but it's such a small part of what I think really lends to us being able to harness the true capacity of our power isn't just spells. It's our ability to tune out the world so we can tune in. And that to me is a bigger, more important part of my practice and the practices that I teach.
That's I love that you said that. This theme has been coming up for me a lot where I'm a connector. I love people. I love being around people. I like I'm drained easily as a highly sensitive person, but I also thrive on connection. And yet it's that very connection that can be so, for lack of a better term, triggering sometimes because you're always dealing with other people's responses to you and needs and feelings. And as a sensitive person, I often feel overwhelmed by that, wanting to love everybody and be there for everybody and feeling bad if I can't be there for everybody. And there's just this constant demand, which they're not putting on me, but it's just me feeling like I didn't show up well for them because I don't feel I have the capacity or the bandwidth. And so there is a tendency for me to just want to isolate and be like, I don't, dealing with people can be very overwhelming. And yet it's what I'm here for, right? So uh, I just kind of want to know your thoughts about that in general from a
Mhm.
spiritual perspective, because I think
Mhm.
the the goal is to connect, the goal is to love, the goal is to help other people and support other people and nurture
Mhm.
ourselves.
Mhm.
But I feel like these days, because we have access to so many people and so much communication, which I love, it also, I think we're all just sort of boundaries is something people are putting up a lot. It's like a lot of talk about
Mhm.
boundaries because we're all feeling like so overwhelmed by it. Anything
Mhm.
you want to say about that in general as it pertains to spirituality and
Yeah.
yeah,
Actually, I would like to talk to you about that.
please.
You have such a beautiful heart. You have such a beautiful, open, giving presence. And I really like that about you. And I can hear it in you. I can hear it in your desire to not ever let anybody feel alone or that you're not there for them or that you won't give your all.
Yeah.
I hear that in you. And there might be a little shadow in there that evaluates your worth based upon how available and how much you give,
Hmm.
right? Like there's a piece of you that is tied to that worth. And the most important thing that I can tell you about that is that the idea that we can't pour from an empty cup, I think is actually false. I think we all pour from an empty cup all the time.
Hmm.
And what we pour doesn't come out to be what we want it to pour, right? Because we don't take the time to fill our cup. And one thing I've learned in the amount of service and readings and work that I do is that you need way more time by yourself than you think.
Hmm.
Way more time than you think. And doing it guilt-free is the work.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
I mean, I used to think I had to teach people how to like clear their schedule and like block out time to completely power down from the world. No socials, no people, no humans, by yourself, like however you can do it, but powering yourself all the way down. I thought that scheduling it was hard. For
Hmm.
most people, it's not for me, but that's what I thought. But what I realized is even when you schedule it, if you're carrying guilt and shame about what you should be doing instead, that all these things that are still piling up, if that's still on you or in you or weighing you down when you've powered down, then the point has been, just becomes useless. So you have to find it within yourself to remember that for you to be of full service requires way more time by yourself to power
Yeah.
up. I mean, as an example, for us to have this conversation today, I have done nothing else
Hmm.
other than focus on being fully present and here, which means I did my rituals this morning and you can
Yeah.
tell I have wet hair. I've been swimming in the ocean today and
Mm.
I put my feet in the sand and I snuggled my puppy and I have had no output today other than this. And that, if you think about that, like what that chose, what did I have to not do in order for me to fully charge to be here? I had to let go of my whole to-do list. And how I set that up is last night I wrote it all down. What are the things I'm going to do after? So I have the spaciousness. What do I need to release in terms of guilt and fear that I'm not doing all the things that I could have been doing during that time
Yeah.
instead? Like it's a process, it's a practice, right? Everything is a practice. And same for you. you will be of service way more when you let go of the idea that you have to be of service.
Yeah, thank you. That's really wonderful and resonant. And I do take a lot of time to myself and then sometimes feel like I'm, you know, uh, I'm taking so much that I'm isolating. And then that's the thing I have to say. Well, that's what you need.
That's
I'm
what you
someone that
need.
I've needed 10 hours of sleep a night since I was a baby. My
Yeah.
mom said you would sleep 14 hours a day and I would check to make sure you weren't dead. And I
Yeah.
still have to sleep 10 hours or I don't feel in,
And anything that
yeah,
tells you that that's not right for you is
right.
conditioning.
It
It's
is.
conditioning and expectations of others. I have the same. I have to fiercely guard my alone time a lot. I have to
Yeah.
guard it because not everybody lives like I do or like you do or will honor their own needs. And so they see this, as, oh, like, wow, like you do that? Like that's your thing? Yep, that's
Yeah.
my thing. Yep, that's my thing.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
sovereignty, knowing yourself and then maybe explore a little bit around that belief of being of service is what gives you value. You just
Mhm.
being you gives you
Right.
value.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's beautiful about protecting our own energy first and putting our own oxygen mask first. Putting
Mhm.
on that oxygen mask first, otherwise we're of no good to anyone else. And like you, if I have a mediumship reading, I don't want to be doing anything before it. It's kind of like that's my one thing of the day. I want to save all of my energy for that, or not all of it, but I
Mhm.
really want to be able to be present and not distracted with, oh, I've been scrambling around all morning and thinking about the bills or thinking about other things. So I kind of, if I can, take a lot of time that day to just let myself sleep in, don't wake up too early, save that so I can be present. And I wanted to also thank you for that because I find that doing this right now, connecting with other spiritual people and how important it is for us to have these conversations for, I think, to inspire people, to give them hope, to help them navigate their lives, hopefully in a more smooth way that this is like my church. And so
Mhm.
sitting with you is like when exactly what you said, I feel so present because I'm not checking my phone. I'm listening to you. I'm receiving energy from you. And I just realized I had stopped doing this podcast for a month just because I was scrambling. And then once I started getting back to it, I feel like I'm in the flow again. And that it's like sitting with you is sitting in church for me, um,
Mhm.
and receiving your insights, your energy. And that's again what I want to share with the people who listen to the podcast.
Yeah, beautiful. And
So,
I know
yeah.
a lot of people won't understand this the way that you and I will, but creating content like this um, that's going to, live out somewhere on a big platform forever is a very large amount of energy. It's a
Yeah.
big output. And I think sometimes as podcasters, we forget that
Hmm.
because we get used to doing a lot of talking and hit record um, and sometimes that's why we need a break from it is
Yes.
because it's a big energy output. Even if we're rested and we're just listening and holding space, we're still creating something that we know, at our in our heart is going to live out and be available for anybody anytime our grandbabies to watch one day
Yeah.
is it's a certain level of energy that is unlike a lot of other things.
Yep. I know. Sometimes I just need a break
Hmm.
from but and then coming back, you can be fresh. You can be fresh and have
Yes,
the energy
yes,
again and feel great about it. Can
yes,
you share about your podcast and also
yes.
your book that is forthcoming?
Hmm.
And
The
talk
book,
about.
do you know the book story? It's kind of a crazy
I wanted you
story.
to tell it. No, I don't.
Okay.
Tell me the book story.
Well, first of all, the mystery school in my podcast is the same. It's called Moon Temple Mystery School. You can find me on all the platforms. In fact, if you just type in my first name, which is Tahverlee, on any platform, you'll find all my stuff because I'm the only person with this name, so you
Yeah.
can find me anywhere. And that's the name of my podcast as well, Moon Temple Mystery School. And moontempleschool.com is all the things. Um, and my book is going to be coming out early next year. And it's kind of a wild and crazy story. I self published my first book and was super excited and happy. And a couple of weeks later, I ended up meeting somebody that met somebody that introduced me to somebody. And to make a really long story short, ended up getting offered a multi book deal with Llewellyn Worldwide. So the book that I self-published got taken down, which is crazy and wild. and will be re-released under the Llewellyn banner next year, as well as the rest of the series. So the book that I'd self-published was book one out of a series of the four elements, starting in the north to the element of earth. Book two will be the east, book three, the south, book four, the west, and it's called the Sacred Magic series. And so they'll all start coming out next year with Llewellyn. So it was kind of a, and I have a whole like stack of the original published books, like you can even see, I don't know, behind me. Um, I have a whole stack of those initially published books, which it'll be totally different now. And Llewellyn has been so amazing to work with. Not at all what I expected to happen. Not what I expected. And I just have to giggle and laugh because until you like try and do the thing. And you know what we were just talking about, in order to write a series of books, right? It's a serious devotional commitment to the process, to my writing, to what I want to give to the world in the way that I teach, because this is all the things I teach in book and being putting it into book form. You know, I have to take more time in stillness. And sometimes I even beat myself up at how much I need to sleep when I'm doing a lot of writing. Like I have to nap. If I take a few days to write, I will probably nap twice in that day. And I'm like, this is crazy. I've had like more caffeine than I've had in the last month. I haven't done anything else physically. Like, why am I? And I'm a weightlifter. So, like, for me to not do physical
Yeah.
activity and still have all the caffeine and still need to sleep twice a day. But the output, you know, like you and I were talking about, the output is so significant energetically that writing has taught me a lot more about honoring the fact that we need more downtime than we think we do. And it's never been as present to me as it has been in the writing process. So yes, my books are coming out through a wild and crazy thing. I'm really excited to be a part of Llewellyn's team. It's very exciting.
Congratulations. I'm writing a book also, and it has taken me like 2 years, and I'm finally three-quarters of the way finished and feeling like, and I know it is, I find the hardest part is just, as they say, putting my butt in the seat. It
Hmm.
feels more intimidating, and then once I start writing, I realize it's just telling, you're just talking. It's not that hard. But in this society where everything is voice to text, you don't have to type. You can just talk it into a phone and it'll transcribe it for you, or everything is sort of instant. The patience, my patience has become thinner, and it's harder in my mind sometimes to imagine, oh, I have to sit down and think. I have to think and put and really
Hmm.
focus and write. But then I find it so fun and cathartic, and like I enjoy it. It's
Keep
just,
going. Keep
yeah,
going. You know, good writing, real honest writing is going to become rare. Right?
yeah,
In
I
a
think,
couple of years, it's going to be rare. So I would say we still need more good books. Keep writing.
yeah,
And
me too.
if anything, you'll know now, I'm sure this is the same with you, but I read books differently now that I've written books
Mm,
because the amount of time and effort and energy it takes to write good books
yes.
is a lot. And it's worth it. Keep going, my friend. Keep going. We need your
Thank
magic.
you. And congratulations to you. That's such wonderful news. And I know that your books and your voice really make a difference in the world. And that's why, again, I love podcasting, because it is
Yeah.
my way of featuring your voice, which excites
Mm.
me. And every episode is different. Every interaction is different. And every guest has so much to share that, like I said, I get so much out of it as well. And I feel like I just had, it's soul fulfill. It
Hmm.
fills my
Hmm.
soul, and then I get
Hmm.
excited because then I think, and now I get to share what you shared with more people, and so it's just this
Mm.
beautiful connection. In summation, I mean, there's obviously so much we could have touched on, and I love what we did touch on. What is it that I ask every guest this? What is it that you just want people to know? If there was one thing that just comes to your mind to break it down, what do you want people to know?
Mm. That there's so much more than meets the eye, that the unseen worlds can be brought into your life and brought into the seen worlds when you understand that you are here with access to so much more than you think you have access to. And I want people to know that the unseen worlds is where the most magic will happen. And in the unseen worlds is where the intangible becomes tangible and where you start to see the real change possible in your life.
Amazing, Tavhverlee. Thank you so much for being here. I will have all of Tavhverlee's links below in the description if you would like to connect with her. And please, whenever the book is coming out, if stay in contact with her so that you can get that book. I'm very excited for you, and thank you so much for doing the work that you're doing.
Thank you.